gallery mode, which can be found in the top right-hand corner, and a reminder to stay on mute, as I said, when not speaking, and of course always be respectful of each other so we can have an open and constructive discussion, and all of the discussions so far have been exactly that. We're going to hear from the speakers shortly. We want to make sure that we've got a lot of time for Q&A, and when we talk about Q&A, actually really just giving us your opinions and your observations and sharing your stories, we found has been just as helpful. So unlike in Talkback Radio, we do actually welcome the opportunity to question and statement. So don't forget to use the chat function, which we'll talk about as well. So when you think of something as we go, please feel free to type those questions and comments into the Zoom chat function. And then that way we can come back to it during the discussion. I think Christina is actually going to lead the Q&A session for us today. So I'm really just your MC to kick things off. We've got great questions and feedback already shared in the lead-up, and we're going to open up the session more than likely with those. I'll introduce our speakers. Sean de Bruin, give us a wave, Sean. Sean's the Chief Executive of TIC SA, familiar face. Gina Norman, next to me here in our studio. Gina is the General Manager of Travel and Distribution at RAA. With Sean, Sam, give us a wave. Sam Telfer, the Liberal candidate for Flinders. We've got the Honourable Zoe Bettison MP. Give us a wave, Zoe. Yes, fabulous, everyone can hear me. Shadow Minister for Trade, Tourism and Investment. And Liz Haberman, Independent candidate for Flinders. Make sure Liz give us excellent, fabulous. Also, we've got a number of other people on the call. It'll be great to hear from you when we get to the Q&A as well, and there may be others, so please put up your hand or type in the chat function if you're there and I haven't given you a shout out. First up, we've got Damien Carter, who's the CEO of the District Council of Streaky Bay, a more beautiful place in the world, you'd be hard to find. Jeff Sheridan, CEO of the District Council of Elliston. I shouldn't say that because they're all such beautiful places on the Eyre Peninsula. Now I've set myself up for contest of who has the most beautiful natural environment on the Eyre Peninsula. Mayor Will Perry, no relation, District Council of Ceduna, as well as having representation from the District Council of Kimber. I've got good friends in Kimber as well, and I'm looking forward to going back there. Annabelle Hender, the Tourism Development Manager for the RDA Eyre Peninsula, I think is also on the call, and we're looking forward to her joining the conversation. Welcome, Annabelle. So as I said, if I've missed you and you've got a key role in the community and in the tourism space, please make sure that you let us know that you're on the call. From RAA, Charles Mountain, our road guru. Charles is our Senior Manager of Safety and Infrastructure, familiar face and voice, with our commentary that we and the advocacy role that we play in road safety and education. So we expect that there may be a number of opportunities to talk about the importance of roads and road safety and the role that this plays in tourism as well. So Charles is available to take questions. In particular, I know there was an announcement on the weekend too, which he might be able to talk about. So on Sunday, the state government announced a further 16 road safety projects in the state, and one of the parcels of those road safety packages included the safety treatments along the Eyre Highway between Ceduna and Head of Bight. So there may be some questions about that Charles can talk to. I will stop talking. I feel I've barely drawn breath. I will hand over to Sean. As I said, CEO of TIC SA. Sean has so much experience in tourism and business, particularly in relationship management, business planning, destination experience development, government engagement and strategic management as it relates to tourism. So I'm going to hand over to Sean to kick us off.
And I'm going to come off mute. Thanks very much, Emily. I've got 3 minutes. I'll start my stopwatch. I've got a few slides here I want to run through. There's two things I want to talk to. One is our last business survey for tourism businesses, which was for October, November and December, the last quarter of last year. And you can see the graph there showing that there's been a significant dip in activity and confidence. And the second piece I want to talk to our advocacy moving into the state election that we're looking for an incoming state government to support our industry with. So just touching on this graph, that some key numbers, but there were 370 businesses that undertook this survey, so the sample size is very strong. 64% of respondents said that there was a significant downturn in their business activity during that period. 42% said they were open, but that they had reduced staff and reduced operations. 75% said that consumer confidence was a critical piece for the future of their business, and obviously it had been hit hard in the last quarter of last year. Just moving on to the next slide, it looks at the different segmentation for purpose of visit. So you can see there business events, business travel, festivals and events, holiday leisure. The green is a decrease, purple is no change, and grey is an increase. You can see there obviously leisure, all sectors have been hit hard. Leisure, there were some signs of positive activity, but largely it reinforced the fact that last quarter was an incredibly difficult period. And from what we've seen, it's the most difficult since COVID hit. The initial shock of COVID was tougher, but the shock that we've just gone through has been incredibly challenging. Moving forward, we're very much about talking and having a conversation. That's the purpose of today's event for us, is having a conversation about an incoming state government and the opportunities for them to invest, to see our industry get back to where it was at 8.1 billion and move on up to 12.8 as the state government strategy points to for 2030. There's 5 key areas: restart and reinvestment, and that's about helping businesses, give them a hand up. Those businesses have potentially lost staff, potentially sold off infrastructure, and also have taken on more debt. They need a hand to actually get going again and to restart. The next 3 are things that you'd normally see in an advocacy piece for us: driving demand. Whenever we ask our members what's the number 1 thing state government should invest in, it's always the same thing, and that's tourism marketing. Events are obviously incredibly important. Infrastructure investment, product development. Business capability is an area that is critical to make sure that once the government invests in those big pieces of infrastructure, the airline attraction, making sure that the backbone of our industry, the SME operators, have the capability to be able to deliver the world-class visitor experiences is a critical success element for us. And quite often it's an element that is missed by state government. And lastly, partnerships. Obviously, there's a lot of resources in state government to support tourism businesses and support our industry. Better leveraging of those existing resources should be a key focus as well. Thanks very much, Emily.
Thanks, Sean. That's great. And we've had such, in the other regional roadshow sessions that we've held, we've had such great feedback in those areas, and particularly in the collaboration space as well, and developing experiences. So looking forward to people sharing their ideas and some of the examples of what's happening in that space as well. So now I'd like to hand over to Gina Norman, as I said, REA General Manager, Travel and Distribution. Gina's also got more than 20 years experience in tourism, customer service and retail industries as well. She's an incredibly strong advocate for the industry and committed to the viability, but also the growth of the sector. So I'll hand over to Gina to talk about some of the experience from REA's point of view.
Beautiful. Thanks, Emily, and thanks, Sean, for your presentation. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Some of you today might know and be working with REA through the travel side of our organisation, and others might be completely surprised to know that REA Travel is one of the longest running travel agencies in the state. And we started helping our members with travel in October 1958. So for more than 60 years, we've been working with and supporting tourism operators just like yourselves. The last 2 years have been really tough for the industry, and today's about giving you the opportunity to ask your local politicians about what supports there are for tourism in your region and what the pathway to recovery looks like for your business. At REA, we want to see the tourism sector return to the vibrant and growing sector it is known for being. That's why we've partnered with TechSA to amplify our voice and support tourism businesses and operators like you to grow the visitor economy in South Australia. To be travel ready, we need to make it easy and safe for people to travel around South Australia. Despite COVID-19, strong interstate travel has meant some regions have experienced strong activity. However, this has revealed certain infrastructure problems in regional SA. That's why when the government introduced the Local Government Infrastructure Partnership Program, we really welcomed it, and now we want it to continue. We want to see the next state government commit to an ongoing regional tourism grant program to support upgrades to town centres and local infrastructure. We also recognise that roads need to be safe and well maintained so people can get to the fantastic tourist destinations that you offer. This is why we're calling for a 4-year road maintenance fund with a minimum value of 600 million to be put towards transparent road maintenance. And while the government's recent announcement of the duplication of the Augusta Highway between Copper Coast Overpass and Lockyer is a step in the right direction, RAA is calling for the full duplication of the Augusta Highway because roads do support tourism. Another key outcome to mention is the government's recent announcement of a cycling strategy for SA. We've called for a state cycling strategy. We're pleased with the government's recent commitment to develop this, and we would like to see this strategy implemented across regions, making accessibility and connectivity better for all. As Emily mentioned, Charles Mountain is on the call to talk to any of these projects today in more detail if you'd like. Improving access via infrastructure is just one piece of the puzzle. Updating, repairing and extending visitor signage is a priority across all regions, as is improvements to visitor infrastructure and improved rest areas and facilities. Lastly, we know the key to the recovery of the tourism sector is a skilled workforce. Monday marked an important date with the reopening of Australia's international borders. However, the challenge will be scaling up a skilled workforce in the time needed to meet demand. In a recent RAA survey, operators identified recruiting and retaining staff as the #1 barrier to growing their business. And while we're pleased with a further round of business hardship grants announced by the government this weekend, which is a much needed lifeline, the deep issues remain. Lack of international workers, along with job security, housing supply, adequate training and upskilling are prevalent issues driving the growing capacity constraints. It's clear that issues driving skills shortages are multifaceted and require a whole of government response. We're calling for a state strategy with regional tourism employment plans specific to your region to respond to growing skills shortages and to rebuild operator capacity. This is vital so that the sector can be more sustainable and resilient into the future. I know it has been and continues to be extremely tough for you as tourism operators, but what has shone through is the incredible resilience of the industry and those working in it. And I really look forward to working with you and supporting you to help grow the visitor economy. Thanks.
Thank you, Gina. And I know we're all looking forward to moving from that sort of COVID ready to travel ready. And we certainly have an interesting conversation to that point with Eddie Hughes, the member for Giles, yesterday in that space as well. I'd now like to welcome Sam Telfer, the Liberal candidate for Flinders. Sam has served as the Mayor of the District Council of Tumby Bay since 2014 and represented a number of boards and committees, including his position as President and Board Member of the LGA SA and President of the Eyre Peninsula LGA. Sam has worked in local government for more than a decade and has a real passion for delivering in key areas such as regional health, economic development and road and infrastructure investment. With that, please welcome Sam.
Yeah, thank you very much. And can I welcome Sean back to Port Lincoln?
Thanks.
Old stomping ground and a face which is certainly welcomed back in Port Lincoln, and to the other guests as well, and especially the Shadow Minister, Zoe Bettison, someone who has been to the region a number of times as well. I'm really looking forward to the opportunity today to actually listen to stakeholders from around the peninsula. We've got a pretty dynamic tourism sector, and we've obviously been going through some pretty challenging times. I mean, that's the same across the whole state, the country, and across the whole world. So I think the exciting part for me is that we're actually starting to see the end of the hardest part of COVID. And as has just been mentioned, the borders reopening are going to be a big thing for us, especially for those of us further up the west coast, to have a bit of that through-fare traffic, hopefully from Western Australia. And also we're starting to see the restrictions that we've had to deal with be rolled back. And I've been talking to businesses all the way around Flinders that have had challenges with those restrictions, and there's no getting around how challenging they've been. Obviously, the government's put investment into things like the Great State vouchers to try and boost the opportunity, and we really have seen more intrastate travel. The most exciting part for me is having people from Adelaide who have never actually been to the Eyre Peninsula basically forced, because their only opportunity to actually travel is within their own state. They're actually being able to experience it a bit more. But that doesn't help those businesses that are probably more geared towards the international or interstate higher end. And I do think throughout this discussion today is going to be the most exciting part, is to see how we can create, using the assets that we've got, which is, pristine environment, wildlife experiences and coastal lifestyle, to actually gear a product which is going to be suitable not just for internationals, but for interstate and intrastate as well. As has been mentioned, I got obviously our local government history, and thank you for the mention of the local government infrastructure program, which is really a key one for me, because it actually got investment from the state government out to every council area around the state, across every region. And a few that I wanted to just mention, because they really are tourism based ones. Cleve did a significant investment into open space and livability. Ceduna Council, I don't know if you know this one, Sean, but upgraded all their amenities, their toilets around town. So, lifting that visitor experience as well as for locals as well. And the City of Port Lincoln put significant money into the development of their foreshore, which I'm looking forward to that project rolling along as well. So, there's plenty of upside when it comes to government involvement once we get through this challenging time, which we're on the cusp of, and to make sure that we're actually investing in infrastructure, which is going to be valuable, not just in the short term, but in the long term as well. That's probably 3 minutes. I didn't time myself like Sean. I could keep on going.
Sam, I think you're one of the few people who actually followed the 3 minute. And so well done to you. And you certainly hit on a number of highlights. And as we have discussed in some of the other forums too, when it comes to things like toilets and basic amenities, they're not sexy, but they're just so important. So thank you for giving such a great overview of your beautiful, the beautiful electorate that is Flinders. Next, I'd like to welcome the Honourable Zoe Beddison, Shadow Minister for Trade, Tourism and Investment, and also thank Zoe for her participation in so many of these forums. Zoe was elected to the South Australian Parliament as the member for Ramsay in 2012. She was born in Whyalla. And has worked for a number of tourism operators and also as a Director of Public Affairs before entering state politics, which has made a real impact. Zoe believes that increased international trade and tourism will ultimately bring more jobs and opportunities for all South Australians, which I think we fully subscribe to that view. So please welcome Zoe.
Thank you very much, Emily. And can I thank TICSA and RAA for their support of what's been a really excellent opportunity to talk to all the regions, to Sam and Liz. Best wishes for the election. And it's wonderful to talk about the regions. Look, I've been talking a lot to tourism stakeholders, and I guess the number one word I hear is uncertainty. We've had some patchiness between the regions. Some regions have experienced more visitors, particularly domestically, than they have in the past. Others who have had higher levels of interstate and international tourists have been impacted quite strongly. The restrictions, as Sam touched base on, making sure you're following the rules at the right time has been something that's been a constant. What I hear from the industry is they are very compliant, but it has been a lot of work to continue to keep yourself up to date with all those restrictions. I often talk about what we've been doing during this time as Labor, as the opposition. As you know, we've taken a stance to support the health decisions of the government to keep us safe. But of course, we have had some concerns about the delay of business payments. And what we've called for is automatic business payments when there are those restrictions. For people in hospitality and tourism, when there's more than 50% restrictions, an automatic daily payment that would go to that business. And the same when bed nights have been cancelled. So when accommodation doesn't go ahead because of border closures, an automatic payment happens. We feel that the government has only responded after the absolute pleas of the business community, rather than recognising that tourism, hospitality and the arts constantly, particularly post JobKeeper, was all continue to be impacted. We've seen those 3 lots of grants come out now, but we think that it should have been automatic. One of the other things, back in June 2020, we advocated for the tourism voucher. And I know they've not universally been fantastic for every single part of the tourism industry. But now we're into round 8. And what I say to people is the most important thing is we're saying to South Australians, this industry, our tourism industry, still needs your help and your support. Some people have done particularly well out of the experiences. It's been a great injection, South Australians knowing what they have to offer. Of course, at the time, I spoke out about the difference between the $100 for the CBD and only $50 for the regions. I don't think that was fair, and I continue to advocate for that. But of course, this comes from a time where I was a very loud voice when in 2018, the new Liberal government cut the tourism budget by $11 million. Now, I started a campaign called Tourism Equals Jobs, because before COVID, more than 40,000 South Australians were employed in this industry. To much surprise of mine, in the following budget, there was another cut to tourism. So all up, there'll be a $24 million cut in the tourism budget going through the forward estimates. Now, this is a competitive industry. We're competing not just with other states, but overseas. So this is going to make the job even harder when we come in. Now, Labor will be announcing our tourism policy in the near future. The focus will be destination marketing, and we'll also touch on events and industry development. Now, I know I'm going over my 3 minutes, but just a moment. I had a road trip with my family in 2020. I caught up with Sam in Tumby Bay, and what I loved about the Eyre Peninsula was all the different activities families could do. And particularly, we loved the Glen Forest Tourist Park. Who could not love winery and animals? What could go wrong? Throw in a Sedgway tour. It's kind of a bit of a highlight. The fresh fish play.
Oh, so it's frozen.
Tours of what now is under sea lions or the sharks. But we did eat at the French cafe. That was at Tumby Bay and is now Port Lincoln. So it is a beautiful, beautiful region. And I look forward to potentially being the Minister for Tourism and certainly working with your region to highlight it even more. Thank you.
Thanks, Zoe. Zoe's holiday stories with her children are always a lot more successful than mine. I know Sean appreciates my colourful road trip stories with my children. I have also been to the lecture. I won't share the many and varied colourful things that happened on our road trip. So thank you very much, Zoe. I'm now going to introduce Liz Haberman, who lives in Wadena with her husband Brett and 2 of their 5 children. Liz and her husband are the owners of the bakery, and Liz is involved in a number of local committees and boards. She was elected to the Wadena District Council in 2018 and is currently on a leave of absence. Liz's interest in politics and making change stemmed from her involvement in South Australia's voluntary assisted dying bill. She announced that she would run as an independent candidate this year, late last year, with a strong focus on improving regional health and reinvigorating regional towns through improved transport infrastructure, roads and rail, and better phone connections. So with that, please welcome Liz.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me here, and also for the opportunity to listen to everyone that this affects so greatly. With our bakery, with COVID, we were affected ourselves. So I know exactly how most of you would be feeling. We actually shut our doors for about 7 months, just because we rely so heavily on through traffic. And when that wasn't happening, we made the call to close, still did a bit of wholesale, kind of kept us going, but yeah, ended up being for 7 months, did a reno in between that. So it wasn't all bad for us, but we were very fortunate to have survived, and we continue to just keep plodding along and building it up and doing what we can to bring people into our own town. We've been in Wadena for 15 years, and watching the amount of traffic come through has been unbelievable. It's fantastic to see so many people stopping now, which also brings its issues as well, which I think are manageable, but things that we need to look at and take seriously. You know, we've got stunning beaches that travellers have now discovered, which can bring great things to the economy, but also it's proven to be quite detrimental to the environment. So I think we've got a real duty of care for, okay, we've got to look after the people that come and visit EP, but we've also got this massive job ahead of us to manage it so that our environment is looked after and safe and protected, so that future generations can enjoy it just as much as we do. So I think, you know, my biggest thing, you know, I need to, you know, I'm here to listen to what people's ideas are. We've tried bookings for the ranges and that sort of thing, and which brings, you know, it kind of works well, but then you need phone coverage for that. So, you know, there's issues that these solutions, they've got their own issues. So whether that's something that we can do in a lot of other places, but once again, yeah, we've got to fix things like telecommunications and stuff. And getting people over here, the roads, quite frankly, a lot of people are quite scared. They haven't travelled these distances before. Now they're dealing with long distance animals on roads and also massive road trains that are just getting bigger. So, you know, there's quite a few things that we need to, as a duty of care, be aware of, which I think we all are. But, you know, it's exciting. We've got some really exciting times of it. Tourism is, I think, the way of the future for us over here. We've got so much to show and share. Yeah, let's do it. Thank you.
We've just got RAA on mute. Finn, if you can.
Sorry, that's a classic in the virtual world we find ourselves in. Sorry, we've got a slightly weird technology set up here. Liz, I was really just reflecting the RAA. We have a meeting of the minds on these issues too, because, and one of the reasons we're so passionate about this area too is that we need to make improvements for the community, and in doing so we create opportunities for tourism as well. And these critical infrastructure issues, you know, we can't build a house of cards, if you like, if we haven't got the basics right, if we haven't got great phone reception so that people can live and work and communicate safely, if we haven't got the right sort of road safety infrastructure to enable the community to move around as well as to create those tourism opportunities, and that we have nothing if we don't have protect the environment. So I think you've made some really great points there. With that, we're going to move into the Q&A session. And as I said, a reminder, please share your comments in the chat function, even if you don't have a question, because we found the most useful parts of the discussion have come from people sharing their views as well. So please don't be shy. Enter your questions and your comments in the chat function so that Christina can pick up on those and introduce you. So I'm going to hand over to Christina, who's now going to kickstart the Q&A for us.
Great, thanks Emily, and thank you Sam and Zoe and Liz for joining us. We've had some really great questions in advance, which have all to an extent been touched on in the introductions, and given we've probably got about just over 25 minutes, really want to try and get through a lot of the breadth of issues and opportunities. So please keep your responses to a nice short sharp 2 minutes. I'm not afraid to use an emoji to let you know you've been rabbiting on for a bit too long. And we do have Annabelle Hender on the line, the EP's Tourism Development Manager with the RAA. So Annabelle, you're on notice that, you know, we might always throw to you to respond as well. But in terms of some of the major issues that were raised by everyone, you know, it was things like traveller and consumer confidence, attracting the interstate and international visitors, staffing. We haven't just heard that with this region, but across all the regions, attracting and retaining great staff. There is some confusion still around the government COVID restrictions and how that's impacting business operations. And of course, as we've heard, the infrastructure needed to create those good experiences. And I reckon probably what we might start with today is the whole idea of driving demand, and how do we keep bringing both local, interstate and now international tourists to the EP, and your ideas as how within that, how we can rebuild that consumer confidence to plan and book ahead, which in turn helps our businesses to plan and equip themselves. So I'm going to start with you, Sam, as the current member. For what are your ideas, and what would you like to see going forward for driving demand into the region?
Well, from my perspective, obviously that marketing support's a real key aspect. And for mine, it's about getting a lot of that decision making back at a local level. I was excited last week. There was an announcement about an extra $12 million for regional development boards within the regions. And I think that Annabelle's on the line. That's an opportunity for us as locals, us as local industry, to actually be involved firsthand in a lot of what we see are natural assets when it comes to trying to, firstly, get the attention of visitors, and then once we get visitors here, to keep them here for a long time. I mean, the discussion obviously comes back to accompanying infrastructure and all the like, but we're going to be covering that later on. But as far as that key marketing point, I think that local decision making, local need awareness is a really key one, and I'm keen to help through the state government drive that through the regional development boards. That's obviously why the current state government is, in recognition of the good work that they've been doing, is looking at investing directly into those boards. Because in the end, they're the ones that have got the local representatives on the boards, they're the ones that councils have got the year of, that local industry have got the year of, and when we can make decisions locally, we're going to have better local outcomes.
Great. I'm sure that's music to Annabelle's ears. So thank you, Sam. Zoe, you've talked about the shrinking budget of SATC, but what else do you see as great opportunities for driving demand to the EP?
Thanks, Christina. Well, I think that your natural assets, and there is a great interest in adventure and wellness tourism, and certainly that's something the Eyre Peninsula can offer quite strongly. I mean, you have a great reputation for food and fresh food. The paddock to plate or the sea to plate is there. You can touch and feel and experience. I personally have a great interest in agri-tourism, and like the fresh, you can actually go up the back and have a tour, see how the fish are captured and stored and presented. I think people are really interested in that. But I also talk about catalyst products. And while I don't want to swim with the sharks, I think it's a massive head turner. And I think to myself, what's going to make a 25-year-old sitting in Melbourne say, I want to go to South Australia for the long weekend, or next time I have a holiday, I'm going to go to South Australia. And I think something exciting and different like that is a catalyst. Now, the key thing, once they're here, they've either flown to Adelaide and then flown to Port Lincoln, or maybe they've taken a drive, is that they linger longer. And so we need to have a diversity of accommodation available for people at different price points. We also want them to part with their money. So have we got restaurants? Have we got different activities throughout the day? But I do think those draw card activities are incredibly important for regions. It's not everything, it's just the catalyst to make someone consider to go there.
Absolutely. Thank you, Zoe. And Liz, really interested in your perspective, particularly, Woodner being further north up the EP and not in those coastal areas. What do you see as what we can do to drive more demand to the region?
Yeah, I think as a whole, as a whole EP, we've got so many different varieties of experiences for people. So, the high end, agreeing with Zoe, the high end market where they do the extra things like shark cage diving, which I've got to say is pretty awesome. Confronting, but awesome. Through to, family getaways, whether that's a farm stay, there's heaps of places that have, I guess, speaking Woodner, we don't have beaches and stuff, but we've got some stunning rocks and Gawler Ranges and just some beautiful places that still deserve to be seen. And once people do get there, they're quite blown away that we've, you know, it's in their backyard and they've never discovered it before. So as far as, you know, van life, like, I mean, that's massive now. So, you know, setting places up that cater for that. So, you know, there's a real range of budgets out there, and these people would probably, you know, they want to go to similar places, but just have different experiences. So I think thinking about not just coastal, because we, being once again from Woodner, a lot of this money seems to go coastal, and I think we need to look at it as a whole, that we just need to get people onto the EP to show them that while we've got beautiful beaches and good experiences there, there's a lot to discover sort of through the centre as well. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And Annabelle, we've just heard, you know, a bit of a mixture of both investment in marketing and driving people, but also ensuring there's new products and the diversity of products. What, from the RDA's perspective, what do you see as the priorities for driving that demand and getting people to the region?
Yeah, I tend to agree with the points that have been raised, but I guess adding to that, it's really important to understand what our demand patterns are. So with such a large region, it's not necessarily even across the area. It's really important to understand what our need periods are so that we can attract the right type of visitors at the right time. I think it's also important to make sure that we're attracting a high quality visitor. We can, you know, go for more visitors, but what are they spending? You're better off having a higher quality visitor that spends more while they're here, that doesn't have as great an impact on our environment and social factors. And then diversify the product experience. It's interesting because we had the TIDF fund where we had, I think, 10 projects on the Eyre Peninsula funded, but we have 26 more experiences or products ready to go. So we'd love to see some funding for the development of those private sector businesses, because that is going to allow us to achieve this diversification of our product experience, which is going to be really important to continue to attract visitors, particularly as we're competing, you know, on a national stage as well as international, now that the borders are opening up. So we really need to appeal to those visitors to get them here. And then, of course, marketing funds to get the word out there.
Absolutely. And your point about the funding will come to as well, because there's been some questions about that. But I just wanted to throw to Jeff Schultz. Sean's asked what your opinion is, Jeff.
I've got lots.
Yeah. You got 2 minutes.
I've got lots. No, you're not going to get them all.
Them.
Look, just listening to what everyone's talking about, we can develop a whole lot of experiences and so forth on Eyre Peninsula, and we can have our iconic ones. But if someone can coordinate points of difference in them, we will attract a lot more people. Because if it's all same wildlife, beaches, but if it's beaches with special accommodation or restricted beaches, that it's actually a privilege to go there, that attracts people. So there's a whole lot of things that you can do that are points of difference. One point that in listening today, with the collaboration, something that's been a problem in Eyre Peninsula forever, and I've run into it this week, and is the education of how to deal with the international market and rating your suppliers. So, for example, I've had an issue this week where there was a change of ownership. The price went up. We're contracted for 18 months out with our rates overseas. And so if I bill my suppliers the new rate, I won't be paid because it's all contracted, it's in brochures, and I just won't get that money, and I've got to foot the bill myself. And this is an education that really has been lacking on Eyre Peninsula, and everyone's gone along saying, I've got my own little business, that all doesn't matter. Yeah, no, I'm not going to put my price up so that I can pay someone a commission, or if I want to put it up today, I will. I won't wait until April to put it up, as it's done worldwide. And that is a serious problem that we need to deal with. I could go on, but I think I've done 2 minutes.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate your views. And I do, Trudy's got a great question there about infrastructure, which we've got a few of as well. But just before we go to infrastructure, I want to come back to I guess the opportunities, but also there are some issues with funding for things like the Tourism Industry Development Fund and supporting businesses to co-invest with government to drive some of these new products and new experiences. And what we've heard a lot from businesses is that the hoops that they've had to go through means that lots of them aren't eligible. They might be too small, or in the case of the TDIF, it unfortunately was oversubscribed and people didn't get the opportunity to make that final submission, even though they'd invested a lot of time and energy and money in some cases into their application. So really interested to hear from the politicians about how we make sure those really, really powerful grant programs are still accessible across the board, and there is a better spread across the regions to make sure there's equity there as well. Zoe, I might start with you this time.
Look, the Tourism Industry Development Fund, of course, has been welcomed, but I did make some comments at the time, and I stand by those comments, that you really had to have a very strong asset base and at least $70,000 available at a minimum to participate in that program. So before we get to the fact that it was oversubscribed, I had many calls from stakeholders who said, I have just barely survived the past period of time, and now you're asking me to put forward a certain amount in support. And I just think that there was a cohort of people who weren't eligible to participate and felt very excluded from that. So that would be one of my comments. Look, this has come back to me several times about the fact that it was oversubscribed, but people weren't notified early enough. I think that this is something we need to have a look at. I saw when we did our Future Job Fund in government, we did a two-stage process where people were supported to do a business case and then proceed to the next round. And the reason I am attracted to that is because then you're not asking people to apply who are probably never going to make the fund or never be eligible for the fund in what it's looking for. I think often an early no is better than a late no. And I think businesses are working on their business, in their business. The grant funding, of course, can be supportive, but it has to be, and it has to be not oversubscribed so much that, you know, dozens and dozens and dozens of people, and I think it was probably more than 50, who put in applications, the applications weren't even looked at. And given what a challenging time it's been, I think that was a bit of a slap in the face to people. So I think there's a little bit of work to be done in how we could proceed with those grants in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you, Zoe. And I'm just going to put Sean on the spot just to segue from one of your comments around the partnership that TIC-SA has had with the Department of Environment and Water this year around their nature-based tourism grants, and how we've worked with them to help businesses to get, test their ideas, but get their grant prepared really well.
Yeah, thanks, Christina. Sam and I were just talking about that actually on mute. What we've seen there is that the Department of Environment, led by Minister Spears, has dealt with many of these issues that have cropped up with the Tourism Industry Development Fund with SATC. So they have a smaller program, and I'll let maybe Sam talk to some of that. But in terms of what we've been able to do, because 95% of tourism businesses are SMEs, they need support to be able to put together, you know, complex government submissions for public money, which, and obviously, you know, government grants for public money, there should be some rigour to go through. So working with the department, we were able to run a program of support where we would help businesses, you know, put down a professional plan. And most of the time it was just, you know, just a little bit along the way, because they do vast majority of it themselves. they were able to then put in a submission that was highly regarded by the department, was very clear and concise, and then could be evaluated quickly. And to your point as well, Zoe, if there was a no, there was an early no, and industry doesn't want to hear a no, but sure as hell doesn't want to hear a no after 12 months of going through a process. They want to hear an early no. And the Jew and Minister Spears has really been delivering on that through the Environment Department. We think there's a lot of positive outcomes there and a real positive process. Maybe I'll just quickly throw to Sam to round that out in terms of some of the infrastructure funding from the current government.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, thank you. I think that there's a bit of a balance. I mean, I understand there's obviously rigour, which has to be put in with public money, but we're also in recognition that it is, you know, a lot of SMEs got to try and simplify the process the best we can, because, you know, I'm a small businessman and I've worked in a lot of community groups and the like. There's not grant writing experts within that. So I go back to whether it's through TICSA or through RDA, that having the capacity to be able to support the businesses which are rolling through that process is a really important one. And from a government end, actually trying to simplify that, because there's different levels of government funding. You know, a lot of opportunities, and we saw it with some of the tourism industry development funds, were really small sort of niche opportunities which added capacity within that business, but, you know, as a capital outlay wasn't significant compared to some of the other ones. So if you make the opportunity for some of those small monies more readily available to businesses, that's really important. And the big cross-industry sort of grant processes, I think that that's where the opportunity is for the collaboration in some of those applications and driving it from a local level. In the end, a lot of those projects which have been delivered and will be delivered, there'll be some more announced soon, I'm sure, are really ones that just add depth of quality. And that's sort of what we're talking about, an upgrade as we go to the tourism experience and to businesses, which are then going to mean that there's going to be flow on to others.
Thank you, Sam. I'm conscious of time, and I do really want to dive a bit more into infrastructure, because we've had quite a few questions, as well as Trudy's put some great commentary and questions in the chat there. I want to start with road infrastructure, because that's come up a lot, and given the area is a very heavily self-drive region. I'm going to start with you, Liz, this time, going back the other way. And what would you be advocating for in terms of road infrastructure upgrades for the region?
Being someone who drives on the roads, I do thousands of kilometres over the course of a month, and quite frankly, I'm used to it. I start at 4 o'clock in the morning, and you know, I'm quite aware of, you know, you're always on the lookout for roos, and, you know, that's a given. And the thing though is the semis are just getting bigger and longer, and they don't care. I was on the UHF yesterday asking someone to please slow down because they were going through road works that, yeah, great, roads are being fixed up, but they leave a hell of a mess in between works, and the amount of windscreens that have been smashed, and you know, just stuff, it's just downright dangerous. And so, but I'm used to it. Whereas these poor buggers that come from over Adelaide Way, they have no idea what's just hit them, because they're not aware of driving. You know, don't swerve. You know, simple things. People have swerved.
Absolutely.
For,
so what would you like to advocate for the region? What would you like the incoming government to do?
Just we need to fix the roads so that they are seriously capable of taking these big trucks in the first place. We need to get the rail back up and running. Like, I just think that's a massive, how it was shut in the first place, I don't know. But that will take off. And I'm not trying to get rid of trucks. I mean, we need them, obviously. But we need, you know, a train can bring people from Adelaide. They can jump on a train, come and do a loop of the EP, and go to some of these great places. It opens up more tourism work for our operators and stuff. So the possibilities are endless, really. All sorts. So
absolutely. Zoe, do you have commentary on road infrastructure for the region?
Look, I do think it's a real challenge when tourists aren't used to long distance driving, and you've got truck drivers who do it as a profession. So it is a real mix of people. I know when we drove out there in 2020, we just took our time and we made sure that we weren't under pressure. I think we only had one spot where we almost missed the local petrol station, but got it in the end. Look, I think that we're in a really large state. And the roads are essential, not just for business and goods and services, but actually as an equaliser within our society and our community to keep us being linked as well. Look, I don't have the details of what our transport plan will be in the regions, but I certainly know it's been advocated to us very, very strongly. I do think that the RAA does a lot of education for people about, stopping and taking your time, being aware of different things. And I guess that's probably one of the things that I think should be quite strong messaging to people. We're encouraging them to come to the Eyre Peninsula, but I don't think whether you're interstate or overseas, even that people actually understand the distances and what that means when you're planning a trip out. So that's probably would be my priority about information. Obviously, maintenance is a continuing area as well.
Thanks, Zoe. And I will throw to Charles in a moment, but I'll just quickly get Sam to let the group know what you'll be advocating for road infrastructure for the region.
Yeah, thanks, Christina. And honestly, this has actually been a good news story the last few years for the Eyre Peninsula. We've actually got $125 million extra spent on our highway. So to give you a bit of an example, and I know that all the locals on the line would be understanding because they're driving at the moment, the Eyre Highway, and a safer road's a wider road from my perspective. And that when we're talking about caravans or trucks, to widen the road out to make that, if there is a slight mistake, then you're not off the side of the road, you're just on the wider part of the road. So the Eyre Highway has had significant shoulder sealing work done. The Todd Highway from Kynecutter down through the middle of the peninsula is one which we all drive a lot and is actually a lot more relaxing and safer now because the shoulders have been sealed all the way along. And the Bird's Eye Highway, which runs east-west across from Cowell all the way to Elliston, has had significant work as well. So from a local perspective, it's been something which, although we've had to have patience through roadworks, and at times there's been 4 or 5 different sets of roadworks we've been going through, it's something which is actually investing in our long term. The next step as far as highway work for me is looking at the Flinders Highway, which goes up the west coast, and there is a lot more of that caravan movement along that west coast, and there's areas there which haven't had the shoulders sealed. So I'm thinking south of Elliston and in between Streaky and Ceduna are 2 which pop into my mind. Is once those wider roads are in place, then that opportunity for people to make sure they're staying safe in that thoroughfare is really important. I mean that's road infrastructure, which is key for safety but productivity as well.
Absolutely. And if we had more time, I know we've got quite a few of the councils on the line. I'm sure there's lots of areas they'd love to advocate for. But I'll just very quickly, Charles, give you a minute to let the group know what RAA is seeing through your research and what you're advocating for.
Well, certainly the points that Sam's made, we totally reinforce. I mean, we continue to advocate for shoulder sealing, roadside hazard reduction, rest areas, intersection improvements, and general maintenance of the road environment is so critical across this area. When the rail line was closed down, we were quite vocal in pushing for greater investment because obviously there was going to be a commensurate increase in heavy vehicle movements across the road network, and obviously we're seeing that at the moment. The one point I probably would make is there's probably more work to do with the first and last mile issues, and the councils I'm sure would agree with that challenge as well. Coordinate that between the department and the relevant councils too. But obviously we'll continue to push for ongoing investment across the region, and we're heartened by the recent announcement about some more works for shoulder sealing and safety improvements. In fact, we will be heading out to the Eyre Peninsula as part of a regional road assessment program, probably in the early part of 2023, all being well, to do a complete assessment across there. We haven't been across to the Eyre Highway to the boundary since about 2014, so it's high time we got back there and did a good assessment of the region.
Sounds like it. Thanks, Charles. And the one last topic I wanted to very quickly dive into, even though I know it's a big one, is around coastal damage and how we manage, and what you think the strategy should be for the fact that we do have a lot more visitors coming to the coastal regions around the whole Eyre Peninsula, and how to manage and balance the encouraging visitors but making sure that natural environment is maintained. So a topic that needs a lot more time than a minute, but I'm going to say Zoe, Liz, Sam, put your hand up if you want to give that one a go in a very short space of time. Oh, everyone. All right. Zoe, you were first with your mic off, and then Liz and Sam.
Yeah, we saw a renewed interest in our state by South Australians, and particularly the Eyre Peninsula was highlighted in that area. And people contacted me at the time about the increased rubbish around the national parks in the Eyre Peninsula. So I did write to the Premier. So I think that what we need is always to be very collaborative about the impacts and the ripples. So when we see that, we're getting more tourists because of whatever, the borders were shut and that was the change. What are the different areas that will be impacted? And I don't think we've always put environmental impacts up there as part of, the old SWOT analysis or what's going to happen. So I think we probably need to be a little bit more agile. When we're all in it together, there's some benefits from having increased demand and South Australians discovering their own backyard. But what are the actual services that need to respond to that? So I just think, I know it popped up probably about a year ago now, but I think it's something for us to think in the future, because it's becoming more valued for us. We know that this isn't a resource that is unlimited, and I think it's one of those ones that we all care about, but we need to proactively support it when we suddenly see an increase in traffic and tourism.
Without a doubt. Thank you, Zoe. Liz. Got yourself off mute, Liz.
Sure. Yeah, I think, it's fantastic that the people are wanting to come over here, but the management of these places is going to be a fairly big task. I think an education through adverts maybe, or I don't know, we just need to get it out there how people should treat our environment. Like, they just seem to not care, and I'm not quite sure. Growing up, we were always taught you didn't ever throw anything out the window, or you always cleaned up after yourself. You don't, use sand dunes as toilets, and you don't leave your rubbish lying around. Leave footprints, take photos. It's as simple as that. So whether there's there's a massive need for education for these people to respect the areas, and also whether there's a subsidy or something available for councils who can then build the infrastructure that is needed at these places, but then also ongoing that they're subsidised so that they can maintain it. Because while these people bring money into the towns and stuff, we just there needs to be subsidies to help these councils, because they're all pretty small, trying to make a go of it with small amount of funds. So
absolutely. Thanks, Liz. And I'm sure all the councils on the line would be happy for you to advocate for them to get some support to see Elliston, thumbs up. Sam, over to you.
Yeah, this is a subject matter I'm very passionate about, and we've been working a lot between the Eyre Peninsula Local Government Association, which I've been the president of, and the RDA on the Eyes on Eyre project. It's been coming and going a bit in the last few years because there's different stages to it. The first part was around signage, so it's about communication with visitors about what experiences there are available, what expectations there are. But it's also the next step is around consolidation of areas where people are actually camping. And there is a real nuanced answer to this, because there's some areas which are Crown lands. Some are Crown lands managed and operated by the department. Some are Crown lands managed and operated by councils. So what the Eyre Peninsula Local Government Association has done is really looking at the ability to consolidate visitors within areas, so put the investment into the capital upgrade of areas where you can actually contain them a bit more, so you know the space that you're working within. So I was excited to actually have, through the Department of Environment and Water, some funds actually allocated to give a few of these test cases. So once that's in place, that can be rolled out in some of these camp areas. But the point was well made by Liz is also around the ongoing costs. So it's pretty easy to pop a rubbish bin somewhere, but we're talking long distances, and departments aren't going out there and emptying rubbish bins, and often councils can't afford to go out and empty rubbish bins. So it's about that collaboration between levels of government and community groups as well, which is going to have to be put in place if we're going to be able to make sure these places are sustainable into the future.
Thank you all. That is, a very deep question and something I think we could really spend a lot more time on, but we are over time. But I do want to just throw to Annabelle really quickly and give you 30 seconds, Annabelle. What, if you've got your local candidates here, what is your pitch for tourism for the Eyre Peninsula, of your top thing that you would love them to take to this election as a commitment for the region?
Yeah, I think what's important to understand is that for the Eyre Peninsula, we do have great challenges, but also great opportunities. So I think, being a greater distance from the capital, we do have greater infrastructure needs. So we do need funding to address those, whether it's signage, telecommunications, road infrastructure. We do try to set up, programs like Eyes on Air, which have collaborative opportunities to address these challenges, which essentially is making us investment ready. So we've got those channels set up. And then in terms of attracting the visitor and retaining them, there's a greater distance to attract them to come. So it needs a greater pull in terms of that product development, and also the draw in terms of marketing funds to attract them here, particularly as we're going to be competing in a more competitive environment in terms of that destination marketing space. So yeah, we do have greater needs as a region. So we'd love to get a bit more attention.
Great. Thank you, Annabelle. And thank you, everyone. I'm going to hand back to Emily in the RAA studio to wrap things up.
Thank you. That was a really great summary of the issues, the challenges and the opportunities for the Eyre Peninsula, and obviously the Flinders electorate. It's just you've got such beautiful communities like Woodner, like Kimber, and the opportunity to travel to the far west coast, as well as all of the other amazing, beautiful coastal communities, and the importance of the environment. So thank you, everyone, for sharing your experiences, your ideas. There was a lot more for us to get into, particularly around collaboration and distribution. So we'd like to keep the conversation going, and certainly we've got, we'll be sharing the contacts in Gina's team for travel to provide sort of further advice in that space. So thank you. That is the end of the formalities for Why Tourism Matters for your region, for our state. Everyone is happy that you've heard from today to be contacted, and we'll also share a short survey to get your feedback and how we can continue the conversations. So thank you very much. Have a fabulous day.